Christian missionary leaders as disciples and servants. That is the sum total of what I want to communicate this evening. For us to do what we are required to do, beginning before today, during our time here, and into the future, we must commit to be Christian missionary leaders who are disciples and servants. So this is how I formulated the journey ahead of us in 4 sentences, or 4 pillars, or 4 theses. 1, we will accomplish our leadership responsibility for addressing the missional issues of our time, of our place, and beyond, if we commit ourselves to listening to God in obedience. Commit ourselves to listening to God in obedience. Sentence 1. Sentence 2. This is so because Christian missionary leadership begins with and is rooted in ongoing discipleship. If you didn't get it the first time, I will repeat that as we go. Third sentence. Missional leadership requires a disposition for servanthood. A disposition for servanthood. Last sentence. The empowerment by God's Spirit for holy living and effective service are essential for such a disposition. Now, I did promise you that I will unpack the 4 pillars. So this is where you will be served with repetition. The first one is that we need to commit ourselves to listening to God in obedience. You will have noted the wording of the title. I have Christian missional leadership. This is because, for me, we must begin with the understanding that mission, the mission that we fulfill in the world, belongs to God and His Christ. This mission is designed by Him. It is His purpose in the world. It is not our idea. Now, you all know this. I decided to go for simplicity, not for complication. You all know this. But how is it that we sometimes get so troubled thinking that we can do it? No, it's not ours. It's God's. It's God's. Let's repeat that. Not just repeat that, but live it. It's God's mission. It belongs to Him. We must think of Christian missional leadership, not just missional leadership. We can only do missional leadership if we obey the one who owns the mission. How simple, right? As Samuel Moffett wrote in 1985, in the strange new world of the Bible, apostles and missionaries are made not just by looking in the world with compassion and love, but by listening to God in obedience. And I will be, those of you who know me know that I always come with documentary evidence. So this is the only documentary evidence I have for this afternoon, for this evening. I will be reading from this Wanted Servant Leaders, a book written by Godfrey Osemensa, published in 1990, the first executive director of the Lausanne Committee for World Evangelization when he was living in Kenya. He held the post for 9 years. For this new generation, I see many of you are much younger, you need to read this book. Maybe, I almost plagiarized it to put it in PDF, but I stopped. If you request it, I will do so before I leave. But this is what Godfrey Osemensa said on page 32 here in this book, where he said the third prerequisite for servant leadership, in addition to conversion and a renewed mind, is a lifestyle of exemplary obedience. Exemplary obedience. I must confess that my heart is troubled after 50 years of ministry, where so many of our leaders forget that the call is exemplary obedience. It's not just words. It's not just flashy things. It's exemplary obedience of the one you committed to, the living God. I'll continue. The second thing is that Christian missionary leadership begins with and is rooted in discipleship. We cannot listen to God in obedience if we do not know him. Hence, we must be disciples of the one who calls us to his work. Again, listen to Godfrey Osemensa, page 24 of the book. The first prerequisite for servant leadership is a genuine conversion. No matter what first attracts a person to Jesus Christ, personal submission to him as Lord can only begin at a time of conversion. In other words, one needs to be actually converted. I know I'm talking to people who are converted, but again, I'm thinking beyond today. Whenever you go out there, maybe you should find a way of assessing whether people who call themselves leaders here and there are actually converted to the true and living God. If they're not, you'll be surprised to find them going to the wayside. How can we call other people, I say, to follow the way of Jesus the Christ if we ourselves do not follow him? We must be disciples, for disciples beget disciples. Let me repeat that line. We must be disciples, for disciples beget disciples. Third element, discipleship establishes the basis for cultivating the disposition for servanthood required for Christian missionary leaders or leadership. The words of Matthew 20, verse 28, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. And John 13, 15 to 17, I've set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. No servant is greater than his master. Now you know these things. You will be blessed if you do them. Are very familiar to us. But I'm troubled that so many of our places are of so-called leadership training focus more on leadership than on servanthood. Or we behave sometimes like this so-called leader of the French Revolution who says, oh, seeing the crowd going somewhere, he said, tell me, where's the crowd going? I must find out because I'm the leader. So because we so long for leadership. We just want to be leaders. we don't long to be servants. My plea here is that we need to long to be servants. Here, God was a message, I think for the last time here that I'm going to quote, page 25 and 31. This is what he said. Unconverted leaders also tend to be denominational empire builders, very much against spiritual cooperation with Christians of other traditions, except where they see opportunity to extend their own influential situation. Cooperation threatens their power base. If they agree on any collaboration, it is because somewhere in their minds, they see it as an opportunity to extend their influence. Since the Lausanne movement is interested in cooperation, this particular paragraph from Mr. Osemasa needs to ring in our mind. Do we engage in cooperation to advance our own cause, or do we engage in selfless cooperation for the sake of God's kingdom? There's a difference. Then page 31, and I will not be quoting from Osemasa anymore. A servant leader must therefore not only be converted, he must also be constantly renewed in his mind. Must constantly be renewed in his mind. Lastly, the disposition for service and servanthood comes by the empowerment of God's Spirit for holy living and effective service. Zechariah 4:6 is clear. Not by might, not by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord. And we heard the extensive reading of Acts that I'm going to read for us this again. We live in a context of powerlessness, whether it's Africa, Middle East. For the rest of the world, we are a powerless place. We need to make sure that whatever we do in the years to come, that God's empowerment by his Spirit dwells in us so that it is his work that will be done. I see in the corner of my eye, I'm done. I have one more sentence and I'm done. Please, please forgive me. While we are here in Addis Ababa, let us commit anew to be people and communities listening to God, listening to him in obedience, and constantly engaging in his work by the power of his Spirit. Let us go from here ready to call others to join us on this marvelous journey where Christ liberates for good.